It's just one dinner, don't be petty, my mom said, handing me a $1,500 bill for a meal I wasn't even invited to. Oh, you want to see petty? I smirked. Then I made sure they regretted it. I lingered outside the bistro, fingertips shaking, against the icy surface of the door, staring in at my relatives through the pane. They were smiling, clinking glasses, enjoying themselves, all while I stood outside, excluded, despite having received an invitation. My name's Emma, 35, and I've always been the one pushed to the sidelines, the ignored daughter, the one no one noticed. Even after earning top honors at Ivy League University, securing a senior title at a renowned consulting agency, and creating financial stability all on my own, I was never considered good enough. The spotlight never drifted from my younger sister, Scarlett, 31. It stayed fixed on her like it belonged there. I never imagined a simple dinner gathering would become the final blow that ended 2 decades of quiet endurance. The pattern was set early. When Scarlett got a participation prize in a 3rd-grade spelling bee, my parents hosted a full-blown backyard celebration with food, balloons, and the whole neighborhood. When I was accepted into Ivy League University on a partial scholarship, my mom barely acknowledged the letter and asked whether I could cover the rest of the cost by myself. When Scarlett barely scraped through high school, they surprised her with a new car. When I graduated college with honors, they didn't come. Scarlett had a light cold and needed them more. Anytime I tried to discuss the imbalance, I was met with dismissal. You're just envious. You've always been so self-reliant. You don't need us like she does. And we love you both the same. But their behavior always contradicted their claims. I was regularly included in family events at the last minute, usually through quick texts after everything had already been arranged. I'd show up at holiday dinners to find the gifts already unwrapped. My birthdays were rushed and minimal. Scarlett's turned into multi-day affairs. Financial requests began subtly while I was still in school. Even though I held down 3 jobs to manage tuition, my parents called with sudden emergencies. Scarlett needed a new laptop, or the car she crashed needed repairs. They always framed it as helping the family, reminding me that with jobs and scholarships I had extra funds. I sent what little I had, living on cheap noodles for weeks, while watching Scarlett's posts from restaurants and shopping malls. After college, the demands escalated. Could I help with her auto insurance? Contribute to their anniversary gift? Cover her credit card bills? Surely I could manage it with my big corporate paycheck. Each request came laced with guilt. Refusing implied I didn't care enough. Last month, I got a major promotion, director level, the youngest in my firm's history. I called home, excited. My dad picked up, listened briefly, then handed the phone to my mom, who said she couldn't talk because Scarlett was stopping by to show vacation photos. Then, just last week, I received a text. Family celebration dinner this Friday at 7 p.m. at the Pinnacle. Come if you can. No explanation. No mention of what we were celebrating. Just another throwaway message. And still, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was about me. Maybe they finally saw me. I cleared my entire day, canceled a key meeting with a major client, bought a $250 bottle of champagne to bring, and picked out a new dress, wanting to look my best for what I naively believed could finally be my moment of recognition. I stepped into the Pinnacle, one of the city's most upscale eateries, exactly at 7 p.m. Through the pane, I spotted my entire family already gathered. My parents, Scarlett, all 4 grandparents, 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and a bunch of cousins. A banner floated over their table. Cheers to your promotion, Scarlett. My chest felt tight, my throat closed up. Scarlett had just moved from junior to full sales associate at the retail shop where she'd been working part-time for less than a year. Still, I entered the restaurant, clutching the champagne bottle, forcing a pleasant expression. The chatter around the table halted the moment I approached. My mom's face tightened with clear irritation. I scanned the table, every chair taken, every plate arranged, every drink poured. No seat for me. Emma, my mom muttered sharply, half rising from her chair and blocking me before I could reach them. There's no space for you. We didn't expect you to actually come. A sharp ringing filled my ears. Heat climbed up my neck as over a dozen family members locked eyes on me, silently watching me crumble. You said it was something important, I whispered. Yes, for Scarlett, she replied, quiet but cold. You're always tied up with work. We didn't want to add pressure. In that moment, 2 decades of being the overlooked one snapped into brutal focus. I gently set the champagne on the edge of their table, turned around, and walked out without a word. My fingers trembled behind the wheel the entire way home. Tears blurred the road, but I didn't stop driving. I just needed the safety of my apartment, the one place in the world that was actually mine. The knock on my door the following day. Afternoon wasn't shocking, but their reason was. My parents stood in the hallway, not with guilt, but with the usual expression they wore before requesting money, expectant, entitled. My stomach turned. The energy between us felt heavy, dense with assumptions. The bill came out to $6,000, my father stated flatly as I let them in. His voice matched the one he used years ago, calling during my college finals to say Scarlett needed $3,000 for a study abroad deposit. Your portion is $2,500. I stared, convinced I misheard. My share? I wasn't even at the table. You were invited, my mother jumped in, arms folded. We booked the reservation for the full group, including you. But just yesterday you told me you didn't expect me to come, I said, voice steady, though a storm brewed inside. That's not the issue, my dad waved off. It was a family dinner. You earn well now, with that shiny new promotion. Families help each other. After everything we've done for you, my mom added, slipping into her well-rehearsed wounded tone, you're really going to argue about contributing to your sister's big evening? I could barely breathe. Everything they'd done for me, the tuition I funded through scholarships and exhausting jobs, the graduation they skipped, the birthdays they brushed off. I won't be paying for a dinner I wasn't welcome at, I said, calmly but firmly. My dad's expression darkened. So, after all this time, you're still bitter about Scarlett's accomplishments? This isn't about Scarlett, I replied. It's always been about Scarlett to you, my mother snapped. You've held resentment since she was born. We try again and again to include you, but you're too busy, too successful, too removed. And now you won't even help celebrate her moment? I think it's time for you both to go, I said, walking to the door. They stood up, huffing with frustration. My mother's eyes welled up with practiced tears. You'll regret being this selfish, my father said coldly as they stepped into the hall. Family lasts forever, Emma. That fancy title won't keep you warm at night. The latch clicked softly as the door shut behind them, a quiet sound that contrasted the emotional wreckage they left behind. I naively assumed that would be the end of it, but by the next morning, while I was barely halfway through my first sip of coffee, my phone erupted with alerts. I hadn't even fully opened my eyes when I realized my family had coordinated an ambush. My mother had posted a carefully worded status online, framing herself as a devastated parent, abandoned by her ungrateful daughter, who refused to honor her sister's success out of spite. She portrayed herself as a confused, heartbroken mom, wondering where she went wrong. Scarlett's post was far more blunt. Imagine your own sister skipping your promotion dinner and then refusing to help with the cost. Sometimes blood isn't thicker than water. Within minutes, a swarm of replies rolled in from extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they all jumped in to share their disappointment. They recalled years of cold behavior from me at family events. They said I'd become arrogant, selfish, too proud now that I had a big job and a fancy lifestyle. It was clear they'd been writing this version of the story for years, and now they'd made me the villain. My inbox filled with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. How could you do this to your mom? Scarlett has always had your back. You've changed so much, and not for the better. I collapsed to the kitchen floor, phone gripped in shaking hands, and let the tears come. Not quiet ones, but heavy, choking sobs that tore through my chest and left me gasping for air. The pain of years of neglect condensed into that one overwhelming moment of public shaming. That same evening, I called my therapist and begged for an urgent session. I spilled everything. When I finally stopped, she said quietly, "This is emotional abuse." Then came the harder part. "What are you planning to do about it?" Her words echoed in my head long after the call ended. As the digital attacks from my family kept pouring in, I couldn't focus at work. Sleep vanished. The anxiety I thought I'd outgrown returned with a vengeance. Then something I hadn't expected happened. A message came through from Alice, my cousin, the daughter of my mother's sister. It simply read, "I know what's really going on, Emma. I've seen how they treat you. It's not right." That one message shifted everything. The next day I got to work. I began compiling proof. Screenshots of the last-minute text inviting me to dinner. Pictures from past events where I was clearly left out. Records of my accomplishments being dismissed while Scarlett's small wins were celebrated in full. I even had email exchanges where I'd tried to talk about the favoritism, only to be met with blame and denial. My fingers trembled as I wrote a social media post. It wasn't emotional or bitter. It was detailed and honest. I outlined the years of favoritism. The rushed dinner invitation, how I'd arrived at the restaurant and wasn't even given a seat, how my parents had shown up the next day to demand $2,500 for a meal I hadn't eaten, and most of all, how emotional manipulation had been a quiet constant in my life. I hovered over the post button for what felt like forever. My thoughts spiraled. Would this destroy my relationship with them for good? Had that relationship ever been genuine? Was I becoming the exact person they always accused me of being? Eventually, I exhaled, hit post, shut off my phone, and went for a long walk by the river. I needed to step away, to give myself the space to not be reachable, to let the fallout come without immediately absorbing it. 3 hours later, I came home and turned my phone back on. The reaction was explosive. My parents responded quickly and aggressively. My dad, a mid-tier manager at an insurance company, who often exaggerated his clout, sent me an email with his company's legal department copied. He accused me of defamation and claimed I'd caused them serious financial harm. The company's legal rep, clearly caught off guard, replied with a generic message about looking into the matter. My dad then forwarded that response to me like it was official proof a lawsuit was underway. My mother contacted my office, speaking with the front desk receptionist, claiming she was worried her daughter was experiencing a psychological crisis and spreading lies about family members. She hinted to HR that I might be mentally unstable. I only found out because my manager, who trusted my integrity and professionalism, immediately informed me about the attempt to sabotage my reputation at work. Meanwhile, Scarlett uploaded a lengthy video accusing me of tearing the family apart out of bitterness. My father sent a message saying I'd regret making such a public attack for the rest of my life, followed by a vague threat suggesting he had connections that could ruin my future in the industry. Their scare tactics, which had haunted my childhood, were now being weaponized against my adult life and career. That familiar fear gripped me again, and my hands shook as I forwarded all messages and recordings to a lawyer friend for review. The tight pressure in my chest reminded me of every time they'd backed me into a corner growing up. But support came from unexpected places. Alice stood by me publicly, confirming everything and sharing her own observations of how I'd been treated. 2 other cousins messaged me privately with words of encouragement. Even my uncle, always kind but usually distant, left a comment. I've seen this pattern for years. Emma's story is true. The biggest surprise came from a childhood friend who had attended many family events. She posted a detailed comment about the favoritism she'd seen firsthand, admitting it always made her uncomfortable, though she never knew how to speak up. Public opinion began to change. Alice revealed that before the dinner, my parents specifically told the family, "Don't tell Emma until the last second. She probably won't come anyway." Desperate to spin the story back in their favor, my mother posted old pictures of us with captions about how she always loved both her daughters equally. My father claimed they had made sacrifices for my schooling, none of which were true. Scarlett accused me of needing to be the center of attention, a bitter irony considering the circumstances. None of their tactics worked. The truth, once brought into the light, wouldn't go back into hiding. 3 days after my original post, I made the most painful but healthiest decision I'd ever faced. I cut ties with my immediate family. I blocked their phone numbers, emails, and social accounts. I instructed my building's front desk not to let them in. I notified workplace security they were to be denied access if they showed up. The relief was instant and powerful. A lifelong burden, the hunger for validation I was never going to receive, lifted off my shoulders. The anxiety I'd carried for decades finally started to fade. In its place, I found peace and the confidence that I had reclaimed my own story. I built a new circle around me, trusted friends, caring extended relatives, colleagues who appreciated my contributions, and chosen family. Weekly therapy helped me recognize the emotional abuse and scapegoating I had endured since childhood. I realized the issue was never me. I had simply been assigned the role of the family scapegoat, and nothing I did could ever rewrite the script they had written. 3 months later, I received one private message, Scarlett's. Somehow, it slipped past the barriers I'd put in place. I always knew they treated me better, she admitted. It was just easier to go along with it than to speak up. You were stronger than I ever was, but did you have to burn down the whole family? Couldn't you have just walked away quietly? I chose not to reply to her message. It revealed everything. The truth was now out, but she still focused on herself and her discomfort over the years of suffering I had gone through. She still wanted me to bear the weight silently, so she wouldn't have to feel uneasy. Through mutual acquaintances, I found out my parents were still portraying themselves as victims, blaming me for ruining the family, while refusing to admit their own role. They attempted to contact me through others multiple times, not to apologize, but to insist I fix the damage I supposedly caused to their image. I remained unaffected by their efforts. The girl who once desperately craved their approval had finally evolved into a woman who acknowledged her own worth. The most unexpected result from this painful chapter was reconnecting with my mother's estranged sister, Aunt Kennedy. She reached out after seeing my post, revealing she had endured similar treatment from my grandparents many years ago. She had been the family scapegoat while my mother had been the favored one, The same pattern had simply repeated itself with me and Scarlett. They treated you exactly how they treated me, she told me during our first meeting in 15 years, over coffee. The difference is you had the courage to speak up. 1 year later, my life had completely changed. My confidence in professional settings had grown immensely, no longer weighed down by the constant feeling of inadequacy from my family. I built deeper, more meaningful friendships now that I understood healthy relationships. I even began dating someone from a supportive, loving family, something I once thought only existed on TV shows. I started creating new holiday traditions with my chosen family. Last Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner for friends, extended family members who had supported me, and even a few colleagues who had nowhere else to go. The warmth and genuine connections in my home that day healed something deep inside me. Through mutual friends, I heard that my parents still blamed me entirely while portraying themselves as victims of an ungrateful daughter. Scarlett had recently gotten engaged, and they were planning an extravagant wedding that I would not be invited to and wouldn't attend even if I were. I no longer felt the sting of exclusion. I no longer longed for their approval or recognition. I finally realized that family isn't determined by blood, but by love, respect, and reciprocity. The $500 dinner bill they insisted I pay was the final invoice for a lifetime of emotional debt they tried to convince me I owed. By refusing to pay it, both literally and metaphorically, I purchased my freedom. The empty seat at that celebratory table wasn't a symbol of my exclusion, but of my liberation. Sometimes the most significant act of self-love is walking away from the table where you're only given scraps and building your own table where everyone is truly welcome.
Asterisk after listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Asterisk.